Welcome to today's episode. Let's talk about today's guest. We have Lonnie Ayers, President and CEO at SAP BW Consulting. How are you doing today, Lonnie?
Doing fine. I'm glad to meet you and happy to be here.
It's great to have you on. Someone with your expertise on this, so definitely a privilege to have you on today's episode. And let's kick it off, right? I'm sure our listeners are tuning in, wondering what SAP BW is all about. So, in your own words, can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. I'll give you background on the company and tell you how we got from where we started to where we are today. We've been in business about 15 years as an independent, first as an SAP focused company doing implementations. When we've used HubSpot for almost that entire time, and we're now a HubSpot partner, an inbound marketing and sales partner of theirs, and we play in the SAP partner space and SAP customer space, both on the SAP side and on the HubSpot side. So,
Definitely. Awesome to hear that. And so that way our listeners could get a good understanding then of your company. What would you say is the key problem that you guys like to solve there and then at SAP BW?
well, for most companies, first off, you should know that even though that's our focus, we get all kinds of different customers from all kinds of different agencies or industries, and primarily it really comes down to they need leads and they need sales. Sometimes they're very small, and sometimes they're fairly large, and they've stumbled. Oftentimes, if they've got a machine that was working and now it's not working, they call us in to fix it. Bottom line. Now, I'll give you an example. Last year, about a year or so ago, we had a school that had went from really doing well to not doing well at all. And when we got into their HubSpot system, we found specifically about 144 issues that had somehow or another worked their way into the system. And we worked our way through that and turned them back to profitability. We tripled our lead production and quadrupled our sales, but it was because things were broken and we put them back together. So
Definitely, so that's important, right? As long as you're going in there and getting it fixed, that's what everybody's looking for. And you did mention you work with a couple of industries, but is there a vertical segment? Is there an ideal ICP for you guys?
yeah. So there's two really. So our target obviously is SAP Partners, and that's because I have a long 25-year history working in SAP itself, where I had a lot of partners I dealt with, and they all universally struggle with, well, how do we generate leads? SAP's the beast. And for a long time, SAP was simply handing them the leads. So they don't do that really anymore unless you're a great big partner. On the other side of it, if you're an SAP customer, oftentimes what we're running into is they have a HubSpot system, they have an SAP system, and 100 other systems. They're not as focused as smaller people in it. In terms of industry verticals, besides those partners, I personally have an industry background: aerospace and defense. That's aviation, fixed jets, fly jets, break jets, maintain jets. I've got 30 some years in that, and so that world is where I'm known. But in my SAP days, my industries included, besides aerospace and defense, travel and transportation. So trucks, trains, planes, ships, professional services. So think the Accentures and the Capgeminis of the world. And ECO, which is engineering, construction, operations, that covers an awful lot of territory. But how buildings get built, and then finally postal and government services. Now, government's not really where we play that much anymore, but they do a surprising amount of marketing, believe it or not. And so that's our core. That's what we can dive in depth and give them advice relative to their industry. We speak their language. But that said, we haven't really found anybody that we can't help. No industry's ever showed up and I'm like, I don't know how you do it. No, what we have is a framework and a methodology that, as long as we're working within it, the industry is actually just a nice to have, but it certainly makes it easier.
Yep, definitely. And on that note, so I mean, you worked with Chevron, with U.S. Army, like you mentioned, really, different types of industries out there. How do they usually find out about you then? Is there a top client acquisition channel for you guys?
Our number one way is, by design, is our website. Today, it's organic traffic all the way. We don't do any paid advertising. I do a lot of paid advertising on behalf of clients who want to juice it up, but we have a different model. And so we've produced over the years, there's about 400 things you can download or consume off my website. There's almost 1,000 blogs, and that's very targeted set of content to bring it into people. But we also get a lot of referrals from happy customers. So and those are always great, right? And so those are our two big ones. I would say a secondary channel is LinkedIn. We combine those two heavily, and it's integrated into HubSpot, and so we have a nice flow coming right off there, and I'm quite active on LinkedIn. So
definitely. Okay, awesome to hear that. And on that note, talking about the website, so that way our listeners could go ahead and visit you guys. You could always check them out at sapbwconsulting.com. What role does the website then play for client acquisition, Lonnie?
It's an educational, in our case, we use it as an educational website. And so if you're in the services business like we are, you have two roles. You're trying to sell your services and you need to recruit people. So ours is both a client acquisition and a recruitment system. And depending on what you do on my website, it actually turns into two different websites and sends you down my marketing funnel, or it sends you down my SAP funnel. So it's really, it's a segmentation machine. And most people consume a lot of content off our site. If you're there, we keep track of it. Some people have consumed 2,200 pages of our website. That's kind of the record. We reached out to the guy, so what's out there? He's just really interesting. What it does is it builds trust. Our industry, if anything, is built on trust. We write stuff as professional business consultants, and from there it kind of opens up the doors for us. So it's a lead gen machine, but it's a trust building machine more than anything. Of course, we turn it into sales. That's our job.
Ultimately, right? Yep, yeah. Definitely. All right, awesome. So on that note, I mean, you have a lot of expertise. Is there any tools or tips or methods that you would recommend to our listeners as far as some website lead generation?
Sure. Of course, our whole thing is on HubSpot, and HubSpot itself is a great platform. And there's the latest partner meeting we had, there's like 13,000 things that you can plug into it. But I will say that across the years, you got to have a content plan. But if you called me today, the first thing I'd be asking you is what can we build a calculator for, right? Those are the number one tools. If you can't calculate it, you probably don't understand your own business all that much. And it goes from, we hardly ever have the little guys, but carpet cleaners to mortgages to house, the whole thing. If we can build a useful calculator, that will usually be their number one lead gen tool. That calculator, though, needs traffic. So we will combine that with video. We will combine that with mostly long-form blogs and a landing page where we collect that video. The other variation they call online tools, but in our industry, building a software tool that people can access. There's several on our website if you look around. That, for example, we've got a tool that supports this really obscure SAP solution called Flexible Real Estate, REFX, that you can go in, you can answer 10 questions, and it'll produce a very, very good scoping document that you can turn to a consultant and say, I want you to do this. That process used to take solid 3 to 6 months, and we sat down, a guy hired us to do it for him, and he said, but here, you keep it. And so we have that, and it's generated, 300 or 400 leads over the years, and people come in, the software gets updated, but those questions are pretty universal. That takes a bit of coding thing, but the challenge there is coming up with the idea. There's lots of tools, but those tools, once built, they work like a champ.
All right, awesome to hear that from you. Great tips and methods there. And well, let's switch gears a little bit, Lonnie, and let's talk about you being the president, CEO there for SAP BW. What are some key tasks that you focus on your day-to-day work?
Sure. I've got kind of a routine that's developed over the years, but it came out of my life in the military where productivity is kind of the thing. First thing I get up is I have 25 or 30 client portals that I kind of take. Are there any red lights flashing at me? Make sure they're running, because that's what pays the bills. Second thing I do is, if not the first, is I check my calendar. What's on my calendar today, this week? Because if it's not on my calendar, Doesn't happen. That's just the bottom line. And my entire site's actually designed to get people to book a meeting with me. So when my calendar is full, I'm actually happy. And then finally, of course, we all got email, but I'm a big believer in user rules. And then so I have, and the rules change over time, and I get lots and lots of emails. So I have rules that basically bucket everything and prioritize things into folders. You'll see that some folders, everything's always red, and some folders, things are hardly ever read. And I have a virtual assistant that I hand off on that, because sometimes there's gold buried in there. And so that kind of sets the day that, and I get done in a couple, 3 hours in the morning, and the rest of the time it's going to be client work, right? And it's prioritize, dreaming stuff up, what's next, strategize, working on the business. So that's the routine. And about once or twice a year, sit down with my team and we have a kind of a strategy. How's it going in business and where do we want to go? But that's the routine every day, relentless.
Definitely important. And so, I mean, you have a lot of expertise, but with all this content out there, how do you stay up to date? How do you learn? How do you keep on growing? Is there any websites or podcasts or newsletters, or where's your go?
There is, and I have to say, I need to go meet her, but there are many newsletters, but my favorite is from a lady who actually turns out to be here in Madrid, named Aleyda Solis. I wrote it down. Aleyda, I think, is Solis. And she sends out just a value-laden newsletter once a week. It's all things SEO. And it's full of links and things like that take you out to stuff that's really pretty useful. I can tell she spends a lot of time pulling in the best of the best. And of course, as a HubSpot guy, I have maintained 13 certifications with them. That means 13 weekends are shot during the year because they expire every year. So you have to retake them, and that's good. But Leda is the one that, she keeps you up to date with all the legal Google, scuttlebutt and things like that. But it's really probably the top one for me. I listen to podcasts when I'm driving occasionally, but that's not very often. In Spain. In the United States, it's a different story.
Yeah, definitely. All right, awesome. Well, let's switch to our next section, which is our rapid fire question round.
Okay.
Are you ready for them?
Sure, go for it.
Awesome. All right. First off, and it can't be any of yours, right? Because you do have a couple of books. You have your how to dominate any market, knowing what to sell.
Right.
Can't be any of those. But what is the last book that you read?
The last book I read is actually about telling short stories, and it was called the Persuasion Story Code by David Garfinkel. And it was so good that I actually used Lumen 5 to go make a video from his free download. And it's the first one first custom review I was able to put on Amazon. And he actually reached out on me on LinkedIn and said, thanks. I wasn't sure I was going to take it, but it did an awesome job. And I liked the book because it was, short and readable, but it was also about how to tell a short story. And over the years, I've had people literally record these calls and I couldn't never figure it out. And a lady from Chicago said, we record these because it's like taking a class every time I hit. I'm like, dang, I wish I had those recordings. I would do something with it,
Yep. All right. Awesome read there. Next up is, what is one single thing that your company is focused on at the moment the most?
Well, we're trying to increase lead generation using artificial intelligence. And so we've just recently been experimenting, not just with ChatGPT. I do that all the time. It's kind of become part of the job, but I won't say we're pivoting, but we're using a tool to generate much more content around SAP itself, whereas we've been focused on, and I think it's because we have enough coming in on the inbound side. So we're going back to our roots and building more long-form, in-depth content, starting with the financial modules, and then working our way around what's called the SAP Diamond, or 16 core modules in SAP. And as it happens, I know quite a bit about all of them, and the machine knows a lot more than me. So, so that's really what we're doing there. I think from an automation standpoint, we actually started off with an automation design 15 years ago because one of my industries was professional services. And so almost every process in my business has been automated from the get-go. Not just marketing, not just sales, but the accounting, the payroll, the logistics of it. We knitted that together years ago, and so we're always tinkering with that kind of stuff. So can we simplify it even more? Because I hate doing the admin stuff, but it's got to be done, kind of thing.
Definitely. All right. Awesome to hear that. Next, Lonnie, is if there would be no boundaries in technology, what would be that one thing that you want to have fixed for your role as a marketer today?
One of the things that I do is I work with a lot of clients on their Amazon product listings and setting up their Amazon stores. And they're real strict. And I wish that the AIs that I'm starting to introduce to help me write those product descriptions were much more aware of the Amazon product description guidebooks. Because if you don't get it exactly right, especially images, you never get it past their screeners. But taking it on my customers that use what's called variant configuration, different color shoes, different sizes, different, that it gets really complex really quick, and the guidelines cover every aspect of it. It's still a very manual process. There's tools to help you get it all loaded and all that, but still a lot of thinking. If I could automate that and trust it, I'd be a happy camper.
Definitely. All right. Awesome. I think anybody would be a happy camper with that. So with you. Next is, if there was one repetitive task that you could automate, what would that be?
We're getting there now, but when I sign up a new customer, the first task I have to do is come up with what's called an information architecture. I got to say today, I can do a pretty darn good job with this with ChatGPT, for example. But it still requires a ton of work to go research to see, do I really have a design here? This is tedious and takes a lot of effort. You can't really get, there's two long poles in the tent. One is doing the work and doing the research is time consuming. And the other is getting the client to actually agree to it, because there's no way to measure that, to say this is right, this is wrong. And I come out of industrial engineering background, everything's processes and measurements. That part needs to get a lot better. I think we could build better quality, higher converting websites right out of the gate if we could get that part nailed. We're working on it.
Definitely. Yep. Awesome. Great. And well, lastly, Lonnie, I definitely do want to ask, and I'm really curious. I mean, you have a lot of experience already in the marketing world, but what is one piece of advice that you would give yourself if you were to restart your journey as a marketer today?
For the same reason I wrote those books, and I have 6 more that I'm working. Know what you're selling. More than anything, know what you're selling. I thought I knew what I was selling, and I had sold literally $1 billion of software, but that's just not the case. And when I say know what you're selling, nothing beats getting with a customer and seeing, what is it that you think you're buying from me, kind of thing. I would spend much more of my time and startup budget on that than what I did back then. I probably ended up in a different route.
Definitely awesome. Some great advice there. I mean, I think, right, if you're in marketing and sales, definitely you got to know, because if not, you're just kind of
but when I say no, I mean know it. This is not new advice. All marketers know, do your ideal customer profile. I'm talking about, getting down. I'll give you an example. Before this life, I had about over 200 sales engagements in my time in SAP. 235 specifically. They're almost always large scale, where we would maybe spend weeks doing discovery and then doing pre-sales and things like that. So we were never solving one problem for a client. That just doesn't happen that way. We were solving all of their problems across all of their functions. Well, what are we selling? A very complex product with a great big team behind me and all that kind of stuff. Well, as a one or two man startup, that's not what you're selling. You're selling something completely different, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that.
I think you put it really good there.
Yeah. But I can do both of those, but that's what I'm really referring to there. And every client, by the way, was different in SAP. And that's been the case for the last, 100 clients of ours and stuff. But it's been a good run. I've worked in all kinds of different industries. Believe it or not, the knowledge from aviation applies all across the board for us. So hope that answers your question.
It did. Thank you so much for that. And well, Lonnie, we are coming to the end of the show here, but I do want to give you the last word. If someone forgets everything about the interview today, what is that one thing they should remember about your company?
You need leads? We can get you leads. But we don't sell leads. We help you generate leads.
There you guys go. From Lonnie. Thank you so much, Lonnie, for being on with us today. To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. And I'm looking forward to our next episode at Pathmonk Presents. Thanks a lot, Lonnie.
You're welcome. Thanks.